but also by the people it honors, the people it remembers. Here today and across the country, we honor and remember the lives, the courage, and the sacrifice of all those who were taken from us 10 years ago in New York City, Washington, D.C., and in a field in Pennsylvania. They will eternally rest in our hearts and in our thoughts, and they will never be forgotten. On this, the 10th anniversary of that tragic day, as we reflect once more upon those awful events, we are now called upon to reaffirm our commitment to each other and to our country. The events of that fateful day summoned a renewed sense of patriotism, of service, of perseverance. It revived once more the binding promise of America that lies behind those three Latin words, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. That while we go about living our daily lives, building our families, pursuing our goals, and that while we may have our differences, we can still come together as one people, as one nation. And on this day, we gather because we, the people, have chosen to stand together in comfort, strength, and tribute. We, the people, have chosen to never forget. And we as a nation have chosen to honor and remember those that lost their lives on 9/11. And in doing so, we reveal once more to all the world and to each other our greatness as a nation. Thank you.
Now I'm pleased to introduce two of my favorite men in uniform, Grapevine Police Chief Eddie Salome and Grapevine Fire Chief Steve Bass.
Good evening. I'm certainly honored to be here tonight and humbled to stand before you representing the law enforcement component of the ceremony tonight. As we gather here tonight to remember and reflect on the events of September 11, 2001, it's hard to imagine that 10 years have passed since that terrible day. And for me, as I'm sure for a lot of you, this 10th anniversary really brought to light how raw this wound is, even after 10 years. While talking to my granddaughter Alex recently about 9/11, I was struck with unexpected reality. She was 2 years old in 2001 and didn't really know a lot about what went on and why. 10 years ago, I vowed to never complain about the noise of an aircraft flying above. Yeah. It's really a beautiful sound. At any rate, it was odd. I mean, I knew it, but it's still to hear her ask questions about 9/11. It seemed odd to me because it was so fresh to me. And certainly, you start thinking about men and women that are really kids in Iraq and Afghanistan today, fighting for America, that were second and third graders when this all began. And it dawned on me how quickly these tragedies really become a history lesson. 9/11 will join the likes of Pearl Harbor and Normandy, the assassination of President Kennedy, and many other days in our history. And I guess we all knew it would happen, but to realize that when at the same time the scab is being scratched off, it really was striking to me. But I also found that removing the feelings from the equation and just teaching as a history lesson to a child, you're able to be a little more objective, and you're actually able to find positives from that terrible day. For you see, we will always face one tragedy or another over the course of a lifetime, but it's our ability to bounce back from those tragedies that really speaks to our strength of character as Americans and as a nation. Albert Einstein once said, "Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. And if there's one thing that sets Americans apart, it's that great spirit that is a part of who we are. While we stood in shock on that beautiful September morning, the mediocre minds mistakenly believed that they had succeeded. They believed that they had crushed our spirits, but the fact is that they were sorely mistaken. You see, they may plan and execute an attack against us, but they can't dictate how we respond to that attack. They may have destroyed our buildings, but they didn't crush our spirit. They may have taken our friends and loved ones, but they can't erase the love and the memories that we will cherish forever. They may have tried to divide us, but they didn't count on us coming together to grieve as a nation. They didn't count on the world uniting in the search for justice. They'd love for us to focus on them when we think of this tragedy, but instead we choose to focus on the positives that came from that day. We choose to focus tonight on the heroes of 9/11 and not the perpetrators. If there's one thing that attack showed us, is that there are heroes all around us. There were people running into those buildings to help wherever they could that really didn't have to be there. They did so because of the love they had for their fellow human beings. There were people aboard United Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania that made the ultimate sacrifice to save their fellow Americans. And when talking about saving lives, we generally talk about police officers, firefighters, men and women in the military, but 9/11 brought other groups into that mix, and one of those is flight crews. And certainly this wonderful memorial behind me is recognition of that fact. It also brought into light citizens of all types, citizens who reported smoke coming from a van in Times Square, employees who reported suspicious purchases of large quantities of chemicals. You see, another unintended consequence of 9/11 is that we didn't give up and choose to live in fear. Instead, we committed to work together, every one of us, to prevent this from ever happening again. Our attackers didn't do their homework. They didn't study how we respond to tragedies. And so they didn't realize that the very things that they dislike about us is exactly what makes us strong. For not only are we in the land of the free, but that freedom is what makes us the country of hope, and the country of dreams, the country of courage, and the country of compassion. Let us vow to never forget our fallen brothers and sisters who lost their lives on that September morning 10 years ago today. Anniversaries come and go, and in a few hours, the 10th will be history. But we will commit tonight to being the country that our loved ones that were lost on 9/11 died to protect. The country that inspires people all over the world. The country that understands that love conquers hate and always will. Thank you all for being here tonight. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Much like Chief Salome, I find myself absolutely humbled to be representing firefighters, paramedics that performed as they performed on that day 10 years ago. As Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but they will never forget what they did here. And I think that speaks certainly volumes for each and every profession that's represented today. For the firefighters, for the police officers, for the flight crews, for those untold heroes and warriors that took part